Talk about being
Yes.
turned on sexually, your
Yes.
body being touched in a certain
Because I
way.
want you to know what's a no, what's a yes,
Mm.
what's I'm willing to explore
The
this.
shame that is imposed on us women for self-pleasure. So, on the topic of sexual intimacy,
Yes.
let's talk about orgasm. Feel the pleasures. It's Rania here, your host on the Healing Train, a podcast designed to help you lighten your load, release whatever is weighing you down, and reconnect with yourself. Whether it's a toxic relationship, childhood wounds that never healed, struggling with self forgiveness, or on a healing journey, it's time we have these uncomfortable conversations. Let's dive deep with experts and professionals in psychology, health and wellness, and alternative healing, and also ordinary people that have been there. It may just be the fresh perspective you need to support your journey. You could even be a guest on this show. This is a space for sharing stories, a safe stop where you can pause, recharge, and know you're not alone. So take a deep breath, settle in, and join me on today's ride as we explore the path to healing together. Hop on board the healing train. You don't want to miss today's episode with my special guest, Erica Wiederlight. Our conversation today is on fire. She is the confidence coach, expert, and speaker. Her work highlights self love, dating, embodiment, pleasure, burnout, and sexual empowerment. She helps clients go from feeling dusty crusty to feeling fabulous and radiant. She is the podcast host of the top rated show, Welcome to the Weeder Life. Her work has been featured in NYFW Galore and Cosmopolitan Magazine. In addition to her extensive coaching background, she is also a public speaker who has spoken at hundreds of venues, including studios, corporate offices, and summits. Erica, welcome to the show, my dear. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is going to be amazing. Can't wait.
Ah, Erica, I normally prepare for every episode and I get a quotation that would be appropriate for the topic that we're talking about. And for some reason, I had forgotten to prepare a quote for our episode. And just last night, searching for something that would be appropriate, and nothing was catching me. And then this one popped up, and I'm like, this is the one. So here I'd like to share the quotation that we are starting our episode with today. And it's thanks to Alessandra Torre. That's what she says. I hate society's notion that there is something wrong with sex, something wrong with a woman who loves sex. Wow, wow. This landed into my lap because that's what we're meant to talk about. This is one of those conversations that we need to have. However, before we dive deep into this very intense subject, let's start by talking about the concept of using pleasure as a healing modality, since this is your expertise.
Yeah,
Let's talk about the hows and the whys. Let's
of
start our episode
course.
from here, if you may.
I love it. And I'm so glad that we started with the fireworks. We started with the boom, 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 the beautiful fireworks, and then we can go to the core. Because
Yeah.
this is what I do with my clients, right? If they're like, I want to work on sexuality or I want to work on dating, I'm like, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Like, let's roll it back
Mhm.
and really understand pleasure as a healing modality. And
Mm.
we're going to get into that, but I have to mention, because I'll go my usual spiel, but I have to mention this because I think this is so potent and in the moment. Just like seeing you being fabulous and radiant gave me, like today getting on this podcast, I'm like, oh my God, you're quite literally sparkly and radiant. And it's not about your beautiful clothes, hair, and makeup, though that looks fabulous. It's your energy. Like you feel sparkly. And for me, that gave me permission to feel sparkly. And so I just wanted to make that note that often humans, especially women, feel scared, right? Like, oh, if I'm sparkly, will that take away from another person? Or is that safe? And so I wanted to let you know, like, what a breath of fresh air
Mm,
that you being in your fabulousness, I was like, yes, like I can be in my fabulousness. And it's so silly, nothing was said, but just you being in this radiated, like radiating energy
mm,
took us to another place. And that's why I'm so obsessed with this work because often people say pleasure, being in your fabulousness, what trivial things. And for me, it's actually quite a spiritual journey.
mm,
Like it's you being in your whatever, you could replace the words, you being in your light, you being your radiance,
mhm,
but you being you sparkly shiny, it gave me permission to be
mhm.
sparkly and shiny. And so I had to mention that because I think that is so part of this conversation that we have to talk about.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, and with that being said, so the pleasure thing, right? Like, let's get into pleasure as a healing modality.
Yeah.
So, like I said, someone walks in the door, let's do sexual empowerment. And like I said, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. What is your relationship to pleasure?
Mm,
And we all have some stuff, whether it's cultural, societal, religious, gender, all of the above
mhm,
conditioning around pleasure, right? And often stories look like it's disgusting, it's lazy, it's a treat that I can indulge in after I work hard, blood, sweat, and tears, right? Like that's usually the story.
mm,
And for me, before we get to the sexual empowerment, the fireworks, the va-va-voom, we have to talk about what's holding you back pleasure-wise day to day. And what I mean by that is, does it feel safe in your body to really slow down and read your book and enjoy your tea? Or
mm,
does that feel unsafe? Right? And like how can we create more mundane pleasure moments
mhm,
in our life. So then there's safety, there's consistency in our body and our brain when it is time to go into the bedroom. So there's this big misconception like, I'm just gonna turn it on when I go into the bedroom and turn it off. And that can be sometimes harmful and problematic because usually that's us being performative, that's us overriding our truth. And
mhm,
so for me, the pleasure, we could go in a few different directions, but for me, pleasure as a healing modality is moment to moment, mundane,
mhm.
boring stuff. Doing the taxes, you know what I mean? Like doing like living. How can we infuse more pleasure? That's what I'm really interested in.
I really like how you said the mundane, our day to day, because it is so true, Erica. If we don't know how to indulge in the actual moment that we are living, and
Right.
indulging has this misconception that it's something, whoa, right? But
Right.
indulging in our pleasure by the simple things, by sipping our cup of tea or coffee,
Yeah.
actually take that moment and go, that tastes good.
Totally.
There's a pleasure moment
Totally.
right there. To eat a particular, whatever, meal, dessert. I have a few of them myself, and believe
Same.
me, I have expressed what I was feeling at that moment, and there are pictures and videos of me to prove it, which they will not come out. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, just saying, this tastes so good. I like that. In that moment, you
Yes.
are in the pleasure. You don't have to think about it while you're doing it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna have pleasure now. No, you're living it. You're being it. You're giving yourself permission
Yes.
to experience pleasure in the day-to-day activities that we do. Going
Yeah.
for a walk, going for a drive, even though in the middle of
Right.
traffic, you can take a moment and say, well, you know what? I don't like traffic, but that gives me a chance to listen to something I like or to just watch the birds as they're flying away. You're again allowing those very basic moments with your children. They could
Yeah.
be doing something very silly. And
Hmm.
instead of being go, 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 busy, 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 taking up your phone to videotape them and what record every moment, just enjoy the moment and just go, oh, look
Yeah.
at them.
Mm. Yes.
I mean, I could go
Yes.
on and on with more examples, but you kind of like pushed my button there and I just went off
Yeah.
because
I'm glad.
because I want us to raise awareness. Again, this podcast, The
Yes.
Healing Train, is about raising awareness. And yes, our topic today is about sexuality and pleasure and all of that. But I also want us to bring to people's attention that it's important for you to be with yourself. Because if
Yes.
you're not with yourself, living the moment day to day, the rest that we're going to talk about is going to be very difficult to attain. It's going to be like an abstract idea that, oh, I can actually experience that. First, you got to go through this step, then you can go to
Yes.
the next step.
Yes, which is
Otherwise, you're
very
jumping.
confronting.
You're
Yes.
jumping and it feels work, it feels hard. And as you're listening or watching us, you'll be like, how? How's that even possible? Well, because you haven't gotten to that step yet, first, of
Exactly.
understanding that it's just be with yourself, the day-to-day stuff. And then the other
Yes.
things will come naturally. And you said it
Right.
earlier, you can't just like go jump into the bedroom. It's not a button you turn on off. Okay, now it's time for pleasure. Okay, now it's time for me to be in my sexual mode. You can be in your sexual mode all day, every day,
Right.
just not acting upon it. You know what I mean? But
Right.
so when it
Right.
leads to that intimate moment you're gonna be with a partner, it's not that difficult. You're already been there. You've already been preparing it. It's who you are. It's not something you
Exactly.
have to do. It's something
Right.
you are being. And I think this is probably something you will be mentioning soon. And I got so excited to talk about it.
I am so excited.
We're not doing it. We're being it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
And you
I'm
took
gonna
the
shut
words out
up
of my
now
mouth.
and let
No,
you.
no. I'm like, yes, I love it. I like geek out on this topic. I'm like, yes, exactly. You took
Yeah.
the words out of my mouth. And you nailed it because it's a being. And that's why I always, again, why I'm like, this is a deeply spiritual practice. And they often say that pleasure is shadow work.
Mm,
Because again, we're confronting our stories, we're
mm.
confronting
Our
being
conditioning.
present, exactly, our conditioning. And it's a deep spiritual practice. I always say this example because I think it's so profound, but there was a yogi, a famous yogi that was like on tour, like teaching his wisdom or whatever, teaching, going around teaching his wisdom, I'll say,
Yeah.
and preaching, if you will, and sharing his wisdom. And one of the people that asked him, like, aren't you so happy you're traveling the world? Like, you're seeing beautiful things, you're living all these experiences. Isn't that fabulous? And he was like, of course, like, what a privilege. Like, this is such a privilege to be able to do this. But I've mastered being present and in bliss at any moment
Mm,
with any condition.
mm,
And why I love that is, yes, right, there's nuance here. If we're in tragedy or if we're in a trauma, we work through that first, right? We don't use pleasure as a way to bypass pain. We don't use it as a bypassing tool. But was what he was talking about was the mundane. So
mm,
it's like, yes, I'm in Italy, this is fabulous, but I also could be anywhere in the world because I know how to really bliss out in the moment. Like I know how to find peace, how to find pleasure, how to find magic, joy
mhm,
anywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's such freedom and such a gift. And what you were saying was so beautiful because I was like, yes, that's exactly it. Because for me, I was on the pleasure journey for so many years. I've
mm,
done this work for so many years, and it's a relationship,
mm,
right? Like I thought when I approach this work, I'm going to do this work. I'm going to put it in a box, put it in a bow, and put it on a shelf. Like pleasure.
mhm,
And I got a rude but wonderful awakening
mm,
that this is a lifetime time relationship.
mm,
And that's peaks, valleys, up, down. And when I was in a harder piece of my life, I was trying to force pleasure, like you said, like that thing, like think it, or like turn on pleasure, turn like trying to scrunch it, like turn on pleasure, come on, Erica. And that me forcing my brain into it wasn't that. Like it's right. Of course, could that help? Could that be inspiring to think positive things, etc.? Yes. But for me, it's an embodied experience
mm,
and it's a lived experience. So I can think about, and my friends used to make fun of me because I used to be like, I would talk about pleasure. I would think about, because I love it. I would think about pleasure. I talk about pleasure. They're like, that's great. Are you also living it? And I'm like, like for me during that tough period of my life, I was dealing with so much that it felt scary to embody it. So it
mhm,
was easier for me to chat around it, right? Like, oh, pleasure, 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 pleasure. It's like, great, that could be an option in addition, but it felt very confronting for me just to breathe and
Mm,
be in the moment and be with that peace or be with whatever emotion comes up, right? Because it's like when you're allowing yourself to be with pleasure, be with joy, other emotions can come up too. And create, right? Like creating that safety of like, oh wow, rage is here. Oh wow, grief is here. And I can carry it all. And I'll say this sidebar point, but I think it's important is in the education that I got, which is lots of different beliefs and systems, but one is through Tantra. And that belief system is aliveness. And for me, aliveness is bliss, silly, orgasmic pleasure over the top, like we said, enjoying that cup of tea.
mhm,
And aliveness is also being and allowing yourself to grieve, allowing yourself to healthfully rage. And this is a sidebar, I won't get too lost on this, but for me, the more I have a relationship with death and all the different shade, death, life, but death, seasons, and cycles,
mhm,
the more I have allowed myself to have pleasure, to have aliveness.
mhm.
Because it's, I see it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is finite. Like I want to enjoy, like it's helped me see life full picture. And so I say this to share that again, it's such a shame because often this conversation, people think it's so trivial.
Mm.
And then we get into it and it's like, whoa, this is this is actually a deep
Yeah,
spiritual conversation.
yeah. It's way more than what, let's say, society has made it about,
Yeah.
right? It's way, way deeper. And while you're talking, I'm getting a vibe that perhaps there's a link between our self-acceptance and self-love and pleasure. There's a link there
Yes,
somewhere.
of course.
And maybe you might want to share your insights on that.
I do. I do. Thank you so much for bringing that up because that for me is huge. I was someone, oh my gosh, a very kind of like how I am now, like a very confident kid, loud, over the top, and fun, free, just free flowing, and life's. And I went through certain circumstances, and that little girl got squashed.
Mm.
And through the years, I went from unapologetically myself to deep self-hate.
Mm.
And
Total
I was
extremes.
extremes, totally, like total extremes. And I, yeah, I was okay. I thought I was okay. I was like, I remember I had a pivotal moment, like, I guess I'm just gonna hate myself. I was just so sad. I guess I'm just gonna hate myself for the rest of my life. Like,
Mm.
I guess it's so crazy to think. I'm like, that was this lifetime, like I'm like that happened this lifetime.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, like I guess that just is what it is. Like that's part of my deal. Like I'm just gonna hate myself for my lifetime. Okay. And then I got to a point where I was like, hold on, this is not it. Like this is not happening. And years of therapy, years of coaching, and things started to move. I'm very blessed, I'm very grateful. Things started to move, and I was like, hallelujah, thank God. And what's so crazy is the thing that got me over the edge, the biggest edge, was pleasure. And I think for me, it's because pleasure taught me that I'm worthy. Pleasure taught me I'm deserving of good things. Pleasure taught me it's safe to be safe in my body.
Mm.
And I was more obsessed, how do I say, with feeling good, feeling the magic, being in flow versus what everyone else thought. I remember I would be so obsessed, I wouldn't even get food in the cafeteria at school. Like I was like, I don't want people to look at me or like what would they think of me, what would they think that I'm eating. And when I became more pleasure minded, it was like I can't wait to enjoy this orange, oh my god, like I can't wait to taste the orange and smell the orange. Or I was less obsessed with what everyone thought and with being in the moment, living my experience. And I could say the same vice versa, right? So the more pleasure I had, the more self-love. The more self-love I had, the more pleasure. And so for me, when I had one of them together, they skyrocketed. Both skyrocketed. And now I'm at a point, right, where it's like, I can tell if I'm not in pleasure. One of the first places I go is like, and again, nuance if things are going on, but I'm like, what's going on with self-love? What's
Mm.
going on with worthiness? I'm like, I just have like a hunch. I'm like, where are you at? And it's like, yeah, I'm feeling a little unworthy. So I saw, like, I That's why I've been pumping the brakes with pleasure.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so for me, it's been a fabulous indicator, right? Like when I'm like, I don't want to deal with pleasure. Like again, one of the first stops is how's the self-love going? Where am I with self-love? Where am I with worthy? Where am I with deservingness? And often it is an indicator of something going on.
A brief stop at a station. If you have a story to share and feel called to tell it, if you want to share your expertise on this show, please send an email to guest@healingtrain.ca. To join me on a journey of healing and recovery, connect with me. My calendar link is in the description. This show is proudly sponsored by Say It Out Loud GG, led by the inspiring Judith Diaz, an avid change maker and passionate advocate for speaking up and raising awareness. The Healing Train podcast is honored to have her support. Now let's get back to the show. What I'm hearing you say, Erica, is that it's very important for us to be gentle with ourselves,
Yes.
number one, and to notice when something is off and to do that little self-reflection. It could
Yes.
literally mean just a few moments and it will click. And if you've been doing the inner work on yourself for a while, it won't take you long to catch it.
Yep,
In the
exactly.
beginning, when you're just starting to do the inner work and dig deep and do the healing, the deep healing, right? The initial phase, it's hard, right?
Yes.
And you second guess yourself and it's like a ping pong, like, no, it's not, back and forth in your head. But when you are on that journey, you're like, yeah, I gotcha. Okay, this is what I'm doing. And it's okay to admit it to yourself.
Yes.
You don't feel
Yes.
guilt, you don't feel shame. Just know that
Exactly.
you've fallen into that, and that's okay because you're a human being living this life, and it's natural to get caught up, to be influenced by those around us. And then you just give yourself grace. Yeah, okay, I think I went there. That's all right.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. That's exactly correct. Because also seasons and cycles. It's not always going to be, and this is something really to understand. It's not always going to be orgasmic
Mhm.
pleasure or the depths. And as you know, as it shouldn't be, right? Like there's going to be seasons and cycles where I'm in a winter of my sexuality or I'm in a winter of my pleasure. Okay, right? Like the gentleness of like knowing, and that's okay, forgiving ourselves. But you brought up a beautiful point. A tool that I always use with myself and with my clients is just for pleasure is just checking it. Well, there's a few things. I check in regularly, like, Erica, how are you? Like, where are you? Right? Because it's like, ba 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 ba. I gotta go to the grocery store. I have this call. I
Yeah.
have this. And then so often I just am like, hello. Like you said, it doesn't have to be this 30-minute meditation.
Mm.
Just, hello, where are you? What is happening? What is happening?
Mm.
Um, and then to take it a step further with the pleasure is I'll ask myself on a scale, okay, right now in this moment, in this morning, am I feeling crunchy and kind of like contracted, or am I feeling turned on? And what I mean by turned on is like a light switch. It doesn't have to be sexual energy, just like turned on, like we talked about, like the lights are on, like I'm here, I'm feeling radiant, I feel the moment. Where am I on the scale? Like we said, kindness, no wrongness, no badness about this.
Mhm.
Where am I? And if I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling pretty crunchy and I'd like to get out of it, great. I ask myself, what can I do to add more pleasure to this moment? And it doesn't have to be a 10. Because maybe we're like, I don't need a 10. Maybe it's like, I just want to get from a -1 to a 2. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, great. Like, that's good enough. Like, I don't need a 10 right now. That feels too confronting, too unsafe. I just don't need it.
Yeah.
But I ask myself, okay. And maybe it's something that, I'm writing a newsletter and I'm crunched over the laptop. Maybe it's like, okay, how do we want to crank up more pleasure? I imagine it like a dial. Like, I
Mm.
just want to dial it 1 or 2 more. Maybe it's just, okay, I'm going to roll my shoulders back. I'm going to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I'm going to put on some jazz music as I do this newsletter. Whatever, right? But it doesn't have to be this big explosion. It is important, like you said, to kindly just like check in and know where we are. I'll say this really quickly is often when I, do this work with people, they have no idea. It's like they're like, where have I been for the
Mhm.
last few years? Right? Like, where have I
Hibernation.
been? Yeah,
They've been in the
exactly.
hibernation for a long
Exactly. They're
time.
like, what? And it's like, it's so They're usual, and this is okay to be on autopilot.
Yeah.
Like I'll push back and they'll be like, every Tuesday, I always say this, every Tuesday I get a turkey sandwich, or every Wednesday I go to Pilates. Never, great. If that structure feels supportive, love it. Don't have to take anything away.
Mhm.
But what I want to push back on is, do you feel in your own life, or is it kind of just like same old, every day, autopilot? And so one of my teachers, her name is Regina Thomashower, and she taught us pleasure research. And the idea of pleasure research is researching your pleasure as if it's your first time, or as if you're with like childlike wonder. And so for me, I'll give you a silly example. I was someone that was like, I hate sushi, I hate certain fish.
Mhm.
And it's like, did I even have sushi? I don't know. Maybe I have a bad experience. I don't know. I don't consciously remember. And
Mhm.
so one day I remember being like, oh no, but I'm going to do this pleasure research thing around food. And so I did it with sushi. And I was like, I love this. Like, where have I been? And then I remember I went out after an evening of one of my teachings, and I usually get the same old thing at the restaurant. I was like, I'm gonna try a rainbow trout. I'm like, this is so random. And I'm like, I loved it. Again, there's other experiences where I'm like, hated that.
Mm.
But I'm like, great. Like I felt alive in my life. Again, I always listen to jazz music while I work. What would it be like to listen to classical? It's just we want to explore life as if we put the childlike glasses on, as
Mm.
if it's like we're really experiencing it. We're really present to it because we're so, like, oh, I don't like this. I do like this. It's like, can we just explore? And that, of course, we can make our brains can make the connection. Of course, that goes sexual, like, right? That goes sexually too. We are conditioned, and we can go deeper into this a little bit later, but we're so conditioned. Oh, I like this. I like that. What would it be like to re-explore? Maybe you like feather-like touch.
Mhm.
Maybe you actually like scratch. Maybe you don't want to be spoken to a certain way. Maybe you do, but it's like allowing ourselves to explore. We want to have life to feel like a playground. And often because we got to keep it moving, keep it going, we put our heads down. And all I'm asking, and all my invitation is can we just like a little bit more exploration, a little bit more play? Can we invite a little bit more of that magic in?
Exploration. That's the theme right now that's in my head. Let's
Yeah.
explore. And I want to explore
Yes.
more. But before we explore more into that sensuality, let's
Yes.
explore another topic that I'd really like for us to talk about because it's very important. And that's our cultural and societal pressures around sex
Right.
and
Right.
religious beliefs. I gotta put that in there because
Of
it is
course.
part of it. And let's talk about the idea about the taboo of sex before marriage or the idea of cohabiting or living like a married couple when you're not legally or through church or whatever religious background official unity, let's call it. How have the religious and cultural expectations shaped women's views on sexuality and their ability to experience pleasure?
Everything completely. It's like a 10 out of 10. It's not even for me. And again, it depends on the person, right? It depends on their background. But even so, some people will be like, "Oh, I wasn't raised religious, or I wasn't raised with these beliefs." I'm like, "Great!" And then we slowly start poking and prodding, and they're like, "Uh-oh, like I didn't know I carried this." So cultural, religious, societal, bam. There's also often what we have, even if we think we don't, which we'll talk about that in a second, but even when we think we don't have any of those, often people have good girl conditioning. Women have good girl conditioning. And what that means is, I want to be good. I want to be especially folks in the spiritual community, right? Or have a desire to grow. Like, I want to be a good person. I want to be a nice person. I want to please. Like, I
Because the
want to.
definition of good and nice that has been taught.
Yeah,
So, so
exactly.
good and nice are general words that we use them, and there's nothing wrong with those words. But
Right.
it's how we associated the behavior
Yep.
to being given that title of good, nice, and of course you want that, so then you do the behavior, which is the conditioning.
Exactly,
Like
exactly,
we're breaking it
exactly.
down. Like how much more can I break it down for you?
Exactly. Like that's exactly it. And so, and again, religious, societal, they all come with their own things, right? Like I
Agendas,
thought agendas, exactly. And for yeah, woo,
intentions.
yep,
Um, yeah, we got the point.
exactly. And you know, it's so funny. I could speak for myself personally. I worked through a lot of this stuff for years and years and years. And I wasn't ignorant to the fact, like, I'm done, but I was like, I moved through so much and it still comes up, right? Like it
Mm.
rears its ugly head. It rears its ugly head. And it often in so many religions and societally too, there's often, I'm sure you've heard of it, the Madonna whore complex, where it's like you can either be the Madonna, which is the pure saint angel, or a
Mhm.
whore, and there's no in between. It's
Mm.
like there's
Yeah,
no
it's either you're this or you're
nuance.
that, black or
You're this
white.
or that. Exactly. This or that, good, bad. And that of course affects us. You know, it's so funny. I remember too when I was doing my pleasure work, right? When I was getting my certifications and this and that, I was like, I love pleasure. I love pleasure. I love pleasure. I'm in it. I teach this. And I didn't realize how triggered I was watching other women in pleasure. And I thought, again, I worked on it for years, so I thought, oh, I'm so happy when women are in pleasure. And then I found when I went even deeper, like when women were like, oh, when I was doing this work and with
Mm.
hundreds of women, and after class we'd go to dinner or we do this, I found myself being triggered, like if someone's really enjoying a meal or really doing this stuff, I was like, oh my God. So my sisterhood wounds came up. Like, she's not allowed to have that. You can't, like, that's a threat. So like it's and this was me working on this for years, being
Mm.
like, oh, I teach women to be in pleasure. And yet I was like, oh my gosh. Right. And that for me is like a witch wound, right? Like there's a witch wound in there. Like, oh my God, she's going to get hurt if she's like out and about really being in pleasure, or you're not allowed to have that, or that's inappropriate, or that's dirty, or that's bad. And so
Yeah.
again, I say this because I worked on this for years and years, and I'll continue,
Yeah.
I'm sure, till I die.
Mm.
Um, that it just the conditioning keeps
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah.
Because also all the work I've done, right? And it's been a tremendous amount of work. I still am a normal human. I hop on TikTok. I hop on, Instagram. I watch TV shows. So even though I have the awareness and the consciousness to be like, Erica, separate, this is entertainment.
Yeah.
Of course our brain is like,
Yeah.
see,
You're
like
taking in. Hmm.
still taking in. And again, I try to be mindful of what I take in, and it's thrown down our faces. It's
Hmm.
thrown in conversations with people I love
Hmm.
too. You know what I mean? Like the
Hmm.
accident, like family members that I am obsessed with. I have no desire to cut off that relationship, but even their conditioning
Yeah.
spills over. And,
Yeah.
and and again, from a place of protection, they want to protect you. They want to make sure that you're safe, and it still spills over. And so I'm so glad you asked this question, because this is profoundly
Mm.
part of the journey. And that's why I do believe this work is shadow work,
Yeah.
because it makes us really look at our conditioning. It makes us really look how what we believe, and it also makes us really see how are we interacting with the world. I'll give you an example. I had a client who didn't realize, and it was pleasure, but it was also with men.
Mm.
And I was like, how are you interacting with men? And she's like, what do you mean? And Cliff Notes, I just had her start to like track, like, how are you behaving with men? And she started to notice like how she was speaking with men, how she was speaking about men. But I remember I got a WhatsApp from her and she was like, Erica, I'm so glad you made me do this exercise. I'm like, why? She's like, because I went into the grocery store and there was a man, we both were sharing the aisle,
Hmm.
and I physically made myself small. And then I started to notice throughout the week, every time I was around a man, I physically made myself small. Like
Mm.
I'd hunch my shoulders or I put my head down. And she's like, for safety, but I feel like I'm not allowed to take up space.
Mm.
And so why I share that is this runs deep, right? It runs deep around pleasure, taking up space, being seen. Like this is deep, profound work. And I go on a tangent with that because I think that's so important, it affects how we show up
Hmm. Hmm.
as humans. You know, like this affects how we show up. And so part of the work that her and I did was making it safe to show up in front of everyone. Like, what does it feel like to really like stand in your power around a man? And that
I
was very
love,
confronting.
I just
Yeah.
love that you brought that because that is a very imminent point that we need to discuss, which is the
Yeah.
patriarchal mentality
Yes.
and the influence it has for generations on end about
Yep.
our sexual relationships, pleasure, and everything around that, and women's to for a woman to feel okay to be in pleasure or to want pleasure, as the quotation we read earlier,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And that's yes, exactly. And feeling the shame of that. Even with me, I'm very blessed, knock on wood. I have a beautiful, loving marriage, and I'm very grateful for that. It's like the best of the best, and I'm obsessed. We're obsessed with each other, etc. And for me, being in I had to undo conditioning. This is a very safe human, but I had to undo conditioning about being in my pleasure in front of him,
Mm.
which is so wild because like this person sees me at every facet of my life, supports me endlessly, is like, thank God, I want you to be in your pleasure. And yet I was hitting stories of, all the conditioning that comes with being a wife, which
Mm.
that's a sidebar, but that was an interesting journey for me. Being single, living pleasure, teaching pleasure. I felt very we all have our stuff, right? Our
Yeah.
different things, but like I felt more liberated. Then being married, I was like, here comes this conditioning. Like I didn't realize I had that, but be a good wife. Okay, you don't want to do too much pleasure,
What you're
Erica. Be a good
supposed
wife.
to do, what
Exactly.
you
Put your head
should be
down.
doing.
Yep, exactly. And so I was like, oh, I didn't think I had this. Like, like that's not what I think of. Like, that's not what I think of like marriage. So where did these beliefs come from?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, right, like, where is this? And so I had to really, again, go back to the drawing board
Yeah.
and make it safe. Like, okay, Erica, I can really enjoy this pasta in front of him. Or I could sit on the couch and, put a feather. My nervous system's a little rocky. I'm going to put a feather to my feet and he can walk by and be in my presence. And that's not dirty, wrong, bad, foolish, etc.
Mhm.
So it's like that woman, right? That when I was triggered by the women, like I was like, don't do that. You're gonna get, whatever stories came up for me. It's like I then had to recondition
Yeah.
myself in a way that was supportive to pleasure. So it's oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're talking about it. But this is so ooh, we have so and this is why I say this too. I always say people are so much more likely to hire a business or a money coach, which is fabulous, right? Like those things have supported me endlessly. Money, oh my gosh, we could talk about that for 5 days. Business, the business is also a spiritual practice. So beautiful investments, gorgeous investments, but often are because of our conditioning, we look the other way with sex pleasure.
Mm.
We're like, that's not that important, or like that's something to put on the back burner. And
Or
it's
no, that's
because
something private. We learn as we go on our own in the bedroom behind closed doors.
exactly. And I don't need someone to help me with it. What are you
Like
crazy? Like
a
I don't need
sex
someone to
coach.
help me with
What's
this.
a sex
Right.
coach going to teach me? How to have sex?
Right, exactly. And people are like, do you watch me have sex with some people? I'm like, no, what? Like that's not what this is. And
Okay,
so
this
it's
we're gonna practice right now. Me as your coach, we're gonna
yeah.
practice.
Exactly. People are like, what is this job? And so often people really turn away from this work, and they turn away because it's like, A, what is it? But B, we know. And I talked to a client yesterday and I said, well, what were your objections, working with me? He's like, I loved you, but I just was really scared. I'm like, about what? He's like, I was scared about what was going to come up.
Mm.
He's like, I just was like, I'm scared. And now he's like, thank God. And we talked about it. He's like, listen, that was there the whole time. He's like, I didn't realize that was running my life anyway.
Yeah.
Us actually talking about it gave me freedom and we moved it much quicker. He's like, but I think I was so scared because I knew on a deep level that this is affecting so many parts of my life. And that's why I love this work because people think, oh, sex, it's on the back burner. It's
Just a
again,
part of my life.
totally, it's
They
just a
think it's
part
just
of
a
my
part of my
life.
They don't realize that it influences everything.
everything. So I'm like, let's just talk about this one thing. Like I'm like, let's go in and talk about this one thing, and then we could find patterns with money, patterns with relationship,
Yeah,
patterns with work, and they're like, how did we find that? It's like because this
the
is deeply
roots.
connected. Yes, exactly. I'm like, we're going to the root. Exactly. And yeah, no, I'm laughing because in my marketing it's like, oh, sex, pleasure, but I'm like, it is root work. It is root healing.
Well, let's talk about the root of why women, okay,
Yes.
experience shame and guilt around their sexuality. And
Oh,
and after we kind of dive deep into that, let's talk about how it impacts back to the self-worth
yeah.
and their relationships.